Welcome to another deep dive. This time, we're going to take a close look at the Indian soft drink market. This is more than just a story about sugary drinks.
Oh, absolutely.
This is intrigue, this is business strategy,
Yeah.
and this is one man's ambition to really shake things up.
It's a fascinating story, and especially because it involves Mukesh Ambani, who is Asia's richest man.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and he's making some serious waves in the market with his latest venture, and that is reviving this once super popular brand, Campa Cola. You might have heard of it.
I have heard of it. And you know what else is really interesting is that our source material is packed with these fascinating details on how Ambani is taking on giants. We're talking Coca-Cola. We're talking PepsiCo. I mean, they've had like a comfortable duopoly in India for ages.
They've had it good for a long time, and now they have a new challenger on the scene.
A new challenger indeed.
Challenger might be an understatement. He's employing a strategy that worked wonders for him in the telecom sector.
Oh, really?
And that's aggressive pricing.
Oh, I see. So like super low prices.
You're talking about Reliance Jio, right?
Yes.
That was Ambani as well, and that disrupted the whole industry. I mean,
Oh, wow.
it was crazy. With Jio, he offered incredibly low prices to gain a massive subscriber base rapidly, and it looks like he's applying the same playbook to Campa Cola.
I mean, it's a bold move.
Yeah.
But the article says he's undercutting Coca-Cola and PepsiCo by a massive 50%.
50%, imagine that.
It's a bold move, especially considering the scale of the Indian market. You're talking about millions and millions of consumers who suddenly are faced with this much cheaper alternative to what they're used to.
Yeah, that's a good point.
It forces Coca-Cola and PepsiCo to react.
And they're already responding, right?
Oh, absolutely. The article highlights that they've started implementing their own price cuts and promotions.
Oh, so they're having to like match him or at least come closer.
It's a classic price war in action.
Yeah, I was going to say that's what it sounds like.
And we all know who benefits in the short term, right?
Consumers.
The consumers. Cheaper soda for everyone.
Right, everyone wins. But then that raises questions about, what about the long-term implications?
Exactly. Yeah. What happens to the market if these price wars continue?
That's where things get really interesting. And the article actually quotes an analyst who says, with all the major players having deep pockets, the market is in for a long-drawn price war, which can lead to a consolidation in the market as smaller players may not be able to sustain in a long-drawn price war.
So it sounds like smaller brands could get squeezed out.
That's certainly a possibility. They simply don't have the resources to compete with giants like Ambani Coca-Cola or PepsiCo in a sustained price war.
And it's not even just about survival, is it? It's about maintaining like the ability to innovate and offer variety to consumers.
That's a key point. Imagine if the market shrinks to just a few major players.
Right.
Would we see less diversity in products, less diversity in flavors?
So it's almost like this deep dive is about more than just the battle for market share.
Right.
It's about the potential reshaping of the entire Indian soft drink industry.
And that reshaping could have a significant impact on what kinds of choices Indian consumers actually have.
Right.
Will it be a market purely driven by price, or will there be room for, the niche players and the unique offerings?
I mean, these are all such interesting questions, and we will be exploring those further. But before we even get into those details, let's just back up a bit.
Okay.
And look at the history of the Indian soft drink market.
Okay.
How did Coca-Cola and PepsiCo even become so dominant in the first place?
That's a great place to start.
Yeah.
The Indian market has a rich history when it comes to its beverages, and understanding that past is essential to grasping the potential future that Ambani's move with Campa Cola might create.
It's interesting, isn't it? Like a simple can of soda can open a window to such complex dynamics.
It really can.
But okay, before we journey back in time, I want to dive into some of the specifics from the article.
Sure.
Can you remind us about those Campa Cola prices again? Just so we're all on the same page.
You bet. The article highlights that Campa Cola is selling at an incredibly low price point. Just 10 rupees for a 200 milliliter bottle and 20 rupees for a 500 milliliter bottle.
I mean, that's way lower than Coca-Cola and PepsiCo were offering before this whole price war started.
Exactly. And that price difference is really crucial to understand Ambani's strategy here.
Okay.
He's essentially betting on volume.
Yeah.
He's betting on long-term market penetration.
So he's playing the long game.
It certainly seems that way. And given his success with Reliance Jio, I don't think anyone should underestimate him.
That's a point.
But on the other hand, Coca-Cola and PepsiCo, they have their own strengths too, right?
Right. They're not just going to sit back and watch.
They're global powerhouses with tons of resources and experience navigating these competitive landscapes.
So it kind of sets the stage for this epic battle.
Indeed it does. And remember, we're still in the very early stages of this. It's way too soon to say who will emerge as the dominant player, but it's going to be a really interesting journey.
Yeah. And to our listeners, what we've outlined so far is just the tip of the iceberg.
Oh, yeah.
There is so much more to uncover, especially when we start looking at the historical context and then all those potential long-term consequences of this disruption.
We're just getting started.
And that is exactly where we will pick up in the next part of our deep dive. We will explore how the Indian beverage market evolved to this point and then consider the various scenarios that might unfold in the future.
It's going to be fascinating.
It really is, so stay tuned.
Before the era of global colas, India had this thriving market of its own local brands.
Oh, really?
Yeah, remember, this is a country with a super long tradition of unique flavors and beverages.
That's a great point. You're right. We often just get caught up in the present-day competition, and we kind of forget that there's this whole history behind it.
Exactly. So you had brands like Thumbs Up Limca Gold Spot.
Oh, yeah. I've heard Thumbs Up.
These were incredibly popular in India for decades. They had a distinct taste that really resonated with the local consumers.
I see. It's like how every region has its own favorite, snacks or dishes, right?
Yeah.
Beverages are part of that cultural landscape, too.
Precisely. And those local brands were doing quite well, capturing a pretty significant portion of the market. But then came the liberalization of the Indian economy in the early 1990s.
And that opened the doors for international companies to enter the market.
Exactly. And Coca-Cola and PepsiCo were among the first to seize that opportunity. They came in with these massive marketing campaigns, leveraging their global brand recognition and resources.
I can imagine the impact that must have had. Suddenly you had these iconic brands associated with Hollywood and American culture competing with local favorites.
It was a huge shift. And to be fair, Coca-Cola and PepsiCo weren't just relying on their brand names. They also adapted their products to suit the Indian palate.
Oh, so they weren't just coming in and saying, here's American Coca-Cola, take it or leave it.
No, they were smarter than that.
They had to be right.
Oh, they had to be. Tastes and preferences vary so widely across the globe.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So they introduced new flavors, tweaked their formulas, and they even acquired some of those popular local brands.
Really?
For example, Coca-Cola, they acquired Thumbs Up.
Oh, wow.
Which was already a household name in India.
Wow, so they were really playing it smart, not just trying to impose their global products, but also trying to integrate themselves into that existing market.
That's a key takeaway. They understood that they had to cater to local tastes and leverage the existing brand loyalty that was already there.
Yeah, that makes me think about the challenges that Ambani might be facing with Campa Cola. It's a brand that I think evokes nostalgia for some people, but can it really compete with the marketing might and the distribution networks of these global giants?
That is the crucial question. And it brings us back to Ambani's strategy of that aggressive pricing.
Right.
He's essentially betting on undercutting the competition to gain market share quickly.
It's a strategy that worked for him with Reliance Jio. So could it be the key to reviving Campa Cola?
It's certainly a possibility. But this time around, he's not dealing with a relatively new market like telecom was.
That's true.
The soft drink industry that's much more established.
Right.
And brand loyalty plays a huge role.
Yeah, you're right. People have such strong attachments to their preferred cola brands.
Yeah.
It's not even just about taste. It's about memories and associations.
Exactly. So Ambani's challenge isn't just to offer a cheaper alternative. He's got to convince consumers to switch brands, break those existing habits and loyalties.
Yeah, so it's not just about price anymore. It's about marketing, branding, and creating a new narrative for Campa Cola.
It's about tapping into that nostalgia, but also positioning it as this modern, relevant brand for today's consumers. And that's where I think Ambani's track record of innovation and disruption really comes into play.
Remember, he completely transformed the Indian telecom landscape with Reliance Jio.
He did.
I mean, who's to say he can't do the same with the soft drink market?
It's certainly within the realm of possibility. But it's going to be a fascinating battle to watch. How will Coca-Cola and PepsiCo respond to this new threat?
Will they engage in a prolonged price war?
Right.
Or will they try to outmaneuver Ambani with marketing or new products?
There are so many potential scenarios here. And that's what makes this deep dive so captivating. We're not just analyzing the past, we're trying to glimpse into the future.
I like that.
We're watching this high-stakes game of chess unfold.
Move by move.
Move by move, and the stakes are incredibly high, not just for the companies involved, but for the millions of Indian consumers that are going to be impacted by the outcome.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's a reminder that business decisions, especially when you're talking about giants like Ambani, Coca-Cola, and PepsiCo, they have these ripple effects that extend way beyond the boardroom.
Oh, absolutely.
So as we move toward like the final part of our deep dive,
Okay.
I want to shift gears a little bit and focus on those potential ripple effects. What are some of the broader implications of this disruption?
That's a great question. We've talked about the impact on consumers. We've talked about market consolidation and the challenges of brand loyalty. But there is another layer to consider, and that's the long-term impact on the Indian economy.
Yeah, so now we're really talking about the big picture.
The big picture. How does this shakeup in the beverage market potentially influence the broader economic landscape?
That's what I want to know.
Well, for starters, it could spark a wave of innovation.
Oh, interesting.
If Ambani is successful with Campa Cola, it might encourage other Indian companies to be bolder to challenge the status quo in their own industries.
So it's like a catalyst
Yeah.
for a new era of Indian entrepreneurship.
Exactly.
Like a shift from being primarily a consumer market to becoming a hub for innovative brands.
Exactly. And that could have a huge impact on job creation, investment, and overall economic growth.
But, I mean, there are potential downsides to this, too,
Yeah.
right? Like, what happens if this intense competition leads to, like, a race to the bottom where companies are cutting corners just to lower prices?
That's a valid concern. There's always a risk that price wars can lead to a compromise in quality or, even ethical considerations.
Right.
It's essential for regulators to step in and make sure there's a level playing field and protect consumers from potentially harmful practices.
That's a good point.
Right.
So while we're all excited about, the disruption and the innovation,
Yeah.
we have to be mindful of the potential pitfalls. And that brings us to another really interesting aspect of this deep dive, the role of the Indian government.
Yeah. The Indian government has a history of intervening in the market, and this situation could be no different. They might introduce policies or regulations to ensure fair competition or to protect the interests of those smaller players.
So it's like another layer of complexity.
Yeah.
We've got these powerful businesses battling it out, and then we have the government that could potentially step in and shape the rules of the game.
It's a dynamic interplay between market forces and government intervention. And it's important to consider both of those perspectives to fully understand the potential outcomes of this disruption.
So as we head into the final part of our deep dive, we're leaving our listener with a lot to think about.
A lot to ponder. We've explored the history, the current battle, and all those potential future scenarios.
But there's one more angle I want to explore, and this might be the most intriguing one of all. What does this whole Campa Cola saga tell us about the global aspirations of Indian brands?
Ooh, that's a good one. That's a question with far-reaching implications.
Yeah.
We'll unpack that in the final part of our deep dive.
Okay, so we've talked about Ambani's bold move with Campa Cola in the Indian soft drink market. But what does this all tell us about the global aspirations of like other Indian brands?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, isn't it? I mean, for years, we've just seen these multinational giants entering and dominating the Indian market.
Yeah, it's always been that way.
Could this be a sign that things are changing?
Yeah, like a turning point.
Yeah. Could this be a turning point where Indian companies start to become the disruptors on the international scene?
I mean, it would be pretty cool to see that.
Yeah, it's certainly a possibility. I mean, if Ambani can successfully revive Campa Cola and then potentially challenge Coca-Cola and PepsiCo on their home turf, that would send a powerful message to the world.
Yeah, it would show that Indian brands can compete and win on the global stage.
Exactly. And then think about the potential ripple effects. Imagine other Indian companies inspired by Ambani's success taking their own products and services to the world.
Yeah, it could be a game changer. Not just for beverages, but for like other sectors as well.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Like, imagine Indian tech companies challenging Silicon Valley.
Wow,
Indian fashion brands becoming these global trendsetters.
that'd be awesome.
Indian entertainment companies capturing the hearts of audiences worldwide.
It's a pretty tantalizing thought.
It's not entirely far-fetched. I mean, India has so much to offer to the world. Like, they have a vibrant culture, a young and growing population, and a real spirit of innovation.
Those are all really good points, but I mean, there are challenges too, right?
Yeah.
What would it take for Indian brands to really make their mark globally?
Well, there are several key factors. I think first they need to develop products and services that really meet global standards. Like they've got to appeal to diverse tastes.
Right, so it's not enough to just replicate what works in India.
Right, they have to understand the nuances of those different markets and tailor their offerings accordingly.
That makes sense.
Second, they need to build strong brands that resonate with international consumers.
So it's about, like, creating a compelling narrative. It's more than just the product itself.
Exactly. And finally, they need to invest in building those robust distribution networks and marketing strategies that can actually reach a global audience.
Yeah, so it's definitely a complex undertaking.
It is, but the potential rewards are immense.
They
I
are.
mean, not only could it lead to economic growth and job creation in India, but it could also contribute to a more diverse and vibrant global marketplace, which would benefit everybody.
Yeah, that would be amazing. That's just really fascinating to think about how something as simple as a soft drink can spark such, like, profound conversations.
Right. I mean, it's a reminder that even the most mundane products can be these windows into complex economic and cultural dynamics.
Exactly. And it's a reminder that the world is constantly changing and that we need to be open to new possibilities.
Like perhaps we're witnessing the early stages of a major shift, a new chapter in the story of global business.
It's true. Only time will tell. But one thing's for sure, the Indian soft drink market is kind of a microcosm of these exciting and unpredictable forces that are shaping the world around us.
It's a world where innovation, ambition, and that willingness to challenge the status quo can lead to some really remarkable outcomes.
So to our listener, we encourage you to just keep exploring, keep questioning, keep diving deep into that fascinating world around you.
Because who knows, you might be the one to spot the next big trend, the next disruptive force, the next Indian brand that takes the world by storm.
And on that note, we'll wrap up this deep dive. Thanks so much for joining us on this journey.
Yeah, we had a great time.
We did. We hope you found it as insightful and thought-provoking as we did.
Until next time, stay curious and keep those minds bubbling.